I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Anne-Marie Slaughter, former dean of the Woodrow Wilson School at Princeton, former director of the policy planning staff, a dear friend, and my former boss, who I'm going to give a hug.
This is actually my day job. Not illicit networks, but foreign policy. And I'm delighted to be here. I'm particularly pleased. Last year, Jared had me moderate a panel in French. So this is looking a little easier. One of the most important things to think about in a connected world is which connections people think of when they see particular things. And this panel is really about when you buy, say, fish at your local ecologically minded supermarket, you probably connect it to where it was caught, where it was raised. Is it farm or wild? Is it line caught? Is it not? Is it ecologically certified? Those are probably the connections you make. By the end of this panel, I hope when you buy that fish, you will connect it to who caught it and under what circumstances they were working. So our first panelist, who is an Indonesian fisherman who was himself a victim of slavery on 2 Indonesian fishing vessels. And he will be coming out any minute. Our second panelist is Jonathan Geach, who is the executive director of double helix tracking technology, and we're going to hear from him about how he's using technology in the timber industry. Jonathan, come on out. Our third panelist is Lanvy Nguyen, who is the managing director of Fashion for Freedom. Lanvy, come on out. And last, we have Ben Skinner, who is the senior fellow at the Schuster Institute for Investigative Journalism at Brandeis. He has written for Business Week, for Bloomberg, and a wonderful book called A Crime So Monstrous. So Ben, come on down.
Thanks.
We have not nearly enough time for the kinds of issues to talk about in terms of removing the chains from supply chains, the literal chains. We are going to start with hearing from who is going to tell us his story. Take a moment now. Pick up your, yes, before he starts talking. It's on channel 3. So connect your headsets, as I'm going to do. Please tell us your story.
Ya, saya seorang pelaut dari Indonesia, dan saya kerja di sebuah perusahaan kapal orang Korea.
One sec. Are people hearing? Not so well. Hang on one second, because I am not, and it's supposed to be set on 3. Go ahead, please.
Ya, saya bekerja di sebuah kapal Korea yang berada di perairan New Zealand. Dan untuk perusahaan New Zealand, ya, dan saya datang dari kampung, sebuah kampung yang jauh dari desa untuk mencari sebuah pekerjaan di sebuah perkapalan. Dan untuk memasuki kapal tersebut tidak mudah untuk bisa kayak semacam naik motor atau naik kursi. Saya harus membayar uang 2 juta rupiah dan harus menandatangani tanda tangan kontrak yang saya tidak tahu apa arti isi dari kontrak tersebut, dan saya harus memberikan sebuah jaminan, sertifikat tanah atau sertifikat rumah untuk jaminan supaya saya tidak kabur. Dan saya harus melakukan semua itu. Kalau saya tidak mau melakukan itu, saya tidak boleh berangkat dari kapal tersebut. Dan saya mendapat panggilan untuk berangkat dan saya meninggalkan istri yang sedang hamil 8 bulan. Saya harus berangkat karena saya membutuhkan dana untuk kehidupan istri saya, untuk melahirkan anak saya. Bayangkan, orang istri hamil 8 bulan, saya harus berangkat. Betapa batin saya harus menangis. Tapi itu sudah kewajiban saya. Saya sebagai seorang suami, ya saya harus bertanggung jawab sepenuhnya untuk memberi makan istri dan anak saya. Tetapi setelah saya datang berangkat di kapal tersebut, bayangan saya New Zealand itu adalah suatu negara yang indah dan tentram dan orangnya itu sangat pengertian dengan pengertian dan sangat menyopani orang-orang lain, dan mungkin di New Zealand saya mendapatkan gaji yang layak gitu, yang saya harapkan. Tapi kenyataannya itu tidak semudah yang saya bayangkan. Saya di New Zealand itu di kapal tersebut saya sering mendapatkan perlakuan kasar waktu pertama kali saya datang di kapal tersebut. Saya sering ditendang, dipukul karena kekurangan bahasa, saya sering dimaki-maki. Dan di keadaan kapal tersebut sangat memprihatinkan. Batin saya sering menangis. Karena apa? Saya sebenarnya nggak kuat. Seandainya saya mau pulang, saya diancam. Suruh bayar ini itu, tiket suruh bayar sendiri. Untuk membayar tiket uang dari mana? Sedangkan gaji saya hanya $260. Dan yang dikirim ke keluarga saya itu hanya 70%. Dan selama 3 bulan tersebut saya tidak mendapatkan gaji untuk simpanan kantor. Katanya kalau sudah pulang itu saya baru mendapatkannya. Dan di situ teman saya juga ada yang tangannya, jarinya hampir putus, terkena kecelakaan lah, istilahnya terkena wire. Itu bukannya safety yang diamankan. Saya sudah ngomong kapten, tapi kapten juga itu tidak memperhatikan sampai anak itu pulang. Kemudian dia dipulangkan. Dan juga di situ di kapal itu banyak orang mabuk, orang kru orang dari kaptennya atau wakil kaptennya itu pada mabuk-mabuk. Itu di situ sering terjadi yang namanya kekerasan suara, sangat tidak nyaman. Dan saya kerja itu 1 hari 1 malam, kalau ada ikan saya tidur hanya 3 jam dan 2 jam. Itu waktu yang untuk istirahat untuk saya. Saya berdiri kerja sampai gemeter, sampai batin saya menangis. Namun apa daya, aku nggak punya kekuatan waktu itu. Tapi nggak apa-apa, semua itu mungkin cobaan buat hidup saya. Kemudian lambat-lambat laun aku ketemu dengan orang Indonesia yang tinggal di situ. Aku menceritakan kejadian saya. Saya melakukan kejadian begini-begini di kapal ini. Aku sering merasakan begini. Akhirnya orang Indonesia itu menunjukkan arah bahwa New Zealand adalah negara yang mempunyai gaji itu sangat bagus. Ternyata di New Zealand itu gaji per jamnya itu $15. Untuk mendapatkan 1 bulan itu kamu bisa mendapatkan uang 5.000 atau 10.000. Kalau kamu kerja nyampe 20 jam, nyampe 30 jam, itu kamu harusnya kaya sekali. Itu kata orang tersebut. Aku mendapatkan kontrak minimum New Zealand itu, aku sangat kaget. Wah, fantastis sekali, sangat besar sekali. Tapi apa aku dapatkan hanya $260. Di situ aku sadar, ternyata aku dimanfaatkan tenaga saya. Saya kerja dengan siang dan malam, dengan tidur sangat sedikit kalau banyak ikan. Itu dengan gaji cuma segitu, batinku sangat menangis. Kemudian aku meminta cara bagaimana untuk bisa melepas ini supaya teman-teman saya dan saya itu bisa lepas dari belenggu ini, supaya bisa merasakan yang namanya standar UM New Zealand, bukan semacam ini. Kalau begini namanya saja dengan perbudakan, kita itu dimanfaatkan, kita harus lepas dari sini. Akhirnya saya ketemu dengan pengacara, ketemu dengan orang-orang pekuat New Zealand, memberi semangat kepada saya untuk mendemo atau harus berani ditunjukkan bahwa ini bukan zamannya untuk bekerja semacam ini. Akhirnya saya mengumpulkan teman-teman saya mencoba bangkit, akhirnya saya demonstrasi meminta upah minimum sebut supaya hak-hak kami bisa dikembalikan, supaya tidak ada lagi yang namanya perbudakan. Karena bagi saya cukup saya saja yang merasakan semua itu. Yang penting buat adik-adik saya atau teman-teman saya yang lain, jangan sampai merasakannya lagi. Cukup saya saja. Kemudian setelah itu aku terjadi demo, hampir demo itu saya berapa hari kemudian mungkin setengah bulan saya merasakan saya minta pulang. Karena Pak, keamanan saya itu saya merasakan itu kurang aman untuk saya. Mungkin bagi perusahaan itu saya telah merobek-robek sebuah perusahaan, menghancurkan sebuah perusahaan, nama baik perusahaan. Itu dari kemarahannya New Zealand menjadi kemarahan orang-orang dari sebuah perusahaan tersebut. Mungkin marah sama saya. Akhirnya aku memutuskan untuk pulang ke Indonesia. Tetapi dengan kepulangan saya, kasus tetap berjalan. Itu di tangan pengacara saya. Karena dukungan untuk saya sangat kuat untuk memenangkan kasus-kasus tersebut. Setelah aku pulang, aku datang ke kantor, tujuanku adalah untuk meminta gaji saya, sisa gaji saya yang 30% tersebut. Tapi kenyataannya bukan gaji saya dapatkan, tetapi apa? Sebuah kertas, surat pencabutan supaya saya tidak menuntut perkara yang ada di New Zealand, supaya saya menyabut. Aku nggak mau untuk menyabut semua itu. Lebih baik saya kehilangan uang tersebut daripada saya menyabut perkara tersebut, tetapi adik-adik saya dan teman-teman saya masih merasakan seperti saya. Lebih baik harga diri daripada uang aku menerima. Lebih baik aku menahan harga diri. Dan sampai sekarang kasus itu masih berjalan. Aku nggak tahu nanti menang atau tidak. Tapi kasus itu masih ditangani di New Zealand dan saya sekarang di rumah ya hanya sebagai nelayan kecil. Istrinya bisa buat makan anak istri saya. Saya dapat sehari, habis sehari, tapi saya merasa bersyukur. Yang penting saya masih hidup sampai saat ini dan sampai sekarang di Google ITS ini.
Thank you. Thank you. And we are glad and very fortunate that you could be here to tell your story and to help continue to make a difference in terms of connecting what you have been through to this larger issue of the complexity of global supply chains, where products pass through many different hands and in very complex chains, which Ben is going to talk to us about now. But above all, we are both pleased, but actually it's very important that you can be here to tell us your story. So Ben, do you want to put this in larger context?
Sure. First of all, it's an honor to follow. He was one of over 36 sources that we at the Schuster Institute for Investigative Journalism partnered with Bloomberg Businessweek on a 6-month investigation. We relied on those sources. We relied on dozens of other sources, industry sources, et cetera, to build out an investigation starting with what we knew to be instances of worker abuse rising all the way to the level, or sinking all the way to the level of gross enslavement. I've been focused on slavery for the better part of 10 years. I don't use that term lightly. In modern society, it's oftentimes a metaphor for undue hardship. That's not what we're talking about in this case. These are people that cannot walk away from their work without dire consequences to them or their families. These are people forced to work, held through fraud, under threat of violence for no pay beyond subsistence. And by that mere definition, there are more slaves today than at any point in human history. Now, what we wanted to do with the Business Week story was significantly connect the instances of slavery that we were seeing in New Zealand's exclusive economic zone, which is the area between 12 and 200 miles offshore that New Zealand claims for its biological resources for the fish. For about 30 years, they had been employing foreign charter vessels to fish in that area. Now, these foreign charter vessels seem to sort of fall, according to New Zealand officials that we spoke with at the time, in murky legal territory when it came to labor rights. On environmental policing, they were extraordinarily rigorous. They had auditors on all of the ships, but the labor rights, the social auditing of these ships was outsourced almost entirely to the companies themselves, and some companies didn't even have those social auditors. So what we did very rigorously with a grossly underfunded team at the Schuster Institute and some great editors at Bloomberg Businessweek was connect the supply chains. The piece named in the end about 25 companies, not all of which had slavery in their supply chains, some of which did, and some of which were major retailers, wholesalers, and restaurants in the United States. Significantly, the response to the piece. Immediately after the story came out, the response of the largest publicly held fishing company, which we named in the piece, in New Zealand, the CEO sent a public letter not saying we'll solve these problems, but saying we'll find the whistleblower. About 48 hours after that, I got a text from in Indonesian. And the text said, agents at my house, running very scared. And agents from the recruiting agency had come to target him. These were folks who had known to visit violence and seize property of fishermen in the past. He had to run with his family. The following day, I went on Radio New Zealand, New Zealand's national radio, with the CEO of that $375 million company. And I said very directly, you can come after me, you can come after our reporting, you can come after Bloomberg Businessweek, you can go line by line, pick this piece apart, you won't find any errors, it's bulletproof. But to go after a source, a 28-year-old source, his 22-year-old wife, and their 1-year-old son, is about the most despicable corporate practice I can imagine. And he instantly went on the back foot and he said, hey, I didn't give the order, et cetera, et cetera. And he actually said, you know, I've told these people not to go after him. Long story short, the response of the companies in the United States, by and large, was very impressive. Companies like Walmart and Safeway, which are named in the piece, were extraordinarily responsive. Some companies, by the way, that we were investigating very thoroughly saw the problems in the offing and did social auditing. McDonald's was one of them, and they get a positive mention in the story. Other companies, like Whole Foods, the response was, the Department of Labor does not list New Zealand as a high-risk country. So ultimately, where we came down and where the market came down pushed New Zealand to a point where this 30-year institution of foreign charter vessel system, the foreign charter vessel system, they recognized was providing such brand damage to the New Zealand pure brand, which they'd so carefully cultivated, that about a month ago they announced that they would be banning foreign charter vessels. It's nice to win every once in a while. And on that note, I just want to leave with one final thought, which is ideally for those of you in the corporate world, proselytize. The market should reward transparency, and I certainly hope that in the future it does, and we'll play our role as journalists to try to make things as transparent as possible, whether corporations want it to be or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, two things that Ben said. One, in many cases, when we think about supply chains, we are paying more attention to the biological resources, in this case fish, but in many other cases, many other environmental resources, than we are to the people who are, in fact, harvesting those resources. And second, this is slavery. This is slavery. This is not worker abuse. We are talking about slavery. And Lanvy is going to talk to us then about slavery in textile production. And as I was listening to you, Ben, I was thinking about the Triangle Fire, because that was slavery, right? They were locked in. That is why those women died. They could not get out when the fire hit because they were locked in, because they were there and essentially not under their own free will. So Lanvy, can you talk to us about what's happening today? And particularly, we're now shifting to solutions, to what is being done and what can be done to remove the chains from supply chains.
First, I like to say that in our group, Fashion for Freedom, we are design innovators, but none of us tort to state that we're doing anything good or charitable, and I make sure that my team never say that, because one of the issues when we get into doing good is that sometimes we extend ourselves beyond the right call and therefore the solution. So stepping back, I came into sort of this humanitarian purposing totally by accident, and I say by accident because I accidentally purchased a woman as a designer and with a client that wanted to buy our design to mass produce it, to sell at one of the largest US stores. They sent an agent to us in Vietnam and said, we want large quantities and we want them on a monthly basis, and we want them for $1.96 per piece. And I thought he was kidding, so I said, well, I should just have slaves working. And without a smile, he basically said that do what you need to, others will. And so that opened up a door of curiosity for me to look into whether this could be happening in my motherland. And when we went to explore this, I found out that it's within the reach of society, and certainly in the supply chain of the garment and consumer goods, $3 trillion big, we all are complicit in this situation. Most of what we wear have some sort of exploitation, whether it be from the cotton field or not. And whether we want to believe a certification like fair trade helps us to sort of disrobe any guilt, it doesn't. It really does not clean up the mess. And or certifications that are very loose is very costly. I now run an organization that looked at not just trying to help the victims. What we looked at is areas where there are high risk of human trafficking or in bonded labor. And what we do is we go in there to see how we can economically fortify their walls, basically helping them to take the talent of and the resources of what they have and create products that you might think is cool, like these pair of shoes, right? These shoes and products that have generations.
Everybody's looking at your shoes.
They're from a village that has over 7 generations of wood carving, and they're at risk of sending their girls across the border to Cambodia. And when we figured out what exactly they do and what they've done for a long time was to carve beautiful, giant dragons for pagodas. And their economy was displaced by Taiwanese who would make prefab for the pagodas. And so what we did was we asked them to make them really small, 6 inches. and see and to put them on shoes so that we can wear them as art in the Western world. So NGOs and organizations that go in there and say, "Oh, you poor thing, we need to teach you how to fish." I'm sorry, most of these people know how to fish very well. Excuse my pun.
Sure.
But what they need are rods, the equipment, and what they need is a access to a marketplace. So what we do is we help to provide that. And what we want to do to safeguard it in the future, trying to utilize technology, is to possibly QR code all the products so that it comes back to a particular artisan. And we baseline it with their particular family, their particular situation, and the particular area that is at risk. And we hope that connecting with some of the Google engineers here, we can map out the areas at risk, and we will be able to see how we can help them better. But this is not a charity. This is about money. And it has to be about money that can be part of the pie, that we can split the pie and share it among everyone, including the social enterprise that I set up as Fashion for Freedom.
Thank you. Let me just push you on one thing. So you are essentially, if I heard you right, saying, look, you can't disentangle the existing chains through certification schemes or other approaches that try to convince people these were properly sourced. You actually need to create whole new supply chains.
Exactly. What I'm suggesting is I think the gospel of John the Entertainer said there's a lot more gray area. The gray area here is in itself the market. And what Jonathan and I have been talking about is, you know what, we're not trying to disrupt the illicit network, we're trying to disrupt the current business model. Because the current business model actually allowed opportunity for the network to go in there and say, oh, you guys are talking about girls that are being trafficked and victimized. We're going to send our girls there and act as victims so that the NGOs come in, show a face of poverty, show a face of destitute, and we're going to continue to use that opportunity to actually create economic gains for those illicit networks. So what we want to do first and foremost is actually disrupt the model in itself, whether it be the model for the NGOs, whether it be the models for the certification that's very loose, that actually takes advantage of those that are trying to create a real roadmap for changes, or the retail business in itself. It has to stop. What we want to do is actually create a real alternative to the supply chain that's very, very murky and very old and needs a new change.
Okay, thank you. So disrupt the business model. Jonathan, let me turn to you in terms of disrupting the business model or other ways. In particular, technology can help in the timber industry, which, of course, there's timber in countless products.
Countless products. And the first question I had for you is what are your shoes made out of and where did it come from?
Yes.
And
Jackfruit, but we would love for these shoes to have the first DNA signature.
We could make sure that's the case. The thing is if you look at the timber industry, it's $150 billion a year globally. The World Bank thinks that about 15% of that, 10% of that, or $15 billion is illegal. That would probably present too much of a cut and dried legal, illegal picture of what's going on, because both licit and illicit supply chains, or parts of the same supply chain, are involved with the trade of timber. And there are just too many different ways that you can get ripped off when you're buying a timber product. And by ripped off, I mean somebody is selling you something that has a claim that this is sustainable, this is legal, this is species A, B, or C, or it comes from this country. And to give you just an idea of the sort of trickery that might go on is that trees from sawn timber from America is processed and turned into a factory in a country such as China or possibly Indonesia or Vietnam. It is then turned into a product and sold back to the Americans. It has to have the country of origin that the tree was harvested in declared, so people will say that it's American. However, the same species of tree are available from the Russian Far East, courtesy of the Russian mafia. They came across the border, They get mixed and blended and laundered into the supply chain. So you have this notion of counterfeit oak, if you like. Just that you would have counterfeit apparel that has not been made from slavery or fish or different types of species. So this problem has been going on for some time, and there haven't been any real solutions. So what we have done is we have asked a simple question that if there's DNA in trees, there must be DNA in tables and chairs and timber products. Why don't we just use that? How difficult could that possibly be? As it turned out, it's very, very difficult. But it is a problem that can be solved. It's just a case of scientists, the right scientists, and an amount of money, and sooner or later you're just going to beat that problem. It's a scientific problem that can be solved. In terms of the real problem we face is getting change in the networks, getting change with certifiers who are making claims that this is sustainable when it's potentially just been a fraudulent claim. Because if you can claim something is sustainable with a certificate, you can gain access to a market you are excluded from. You can charge a premium. Therefore, there is an incentive to claim that it is sustainable, especially if you are cheating. So we use genetics to disrupt the networks. We use genetics to reward the people who are doing it properly. And within maybe 18 months, this will be so cheap, it would be a case of why wouldn't you do it anyway?
Wow. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. We are out of time. Can I ask one question? Of course. Okay. There are many, but I just want to, I want to ask all of you to just comment on the politics, because, Jonathan, what I just heard you say is, again, this is possible to do. You disrupt the current networks and you supply a new technology, and it can be done. I heard the same thing with a different business model. And Ben, when you talked about, actually pointing out that these are these companies we trust, but what are they doing? What are the political obstacles to making this happen?
The political obstacles, they could be corporate politics. So very, very large, well-known international brands that sell all of us furniture, we've all got some of it, they will be assiduous in tracking their supply chain up until the point it gets really interesting, which is, where did that tree come from? Where did that thing come from? And that suddenly is just too difficult. Oh, you don't understand my supply chain. It's too difficult. It's too complicated. You'll never be able to afford to buy furniture from me again. Now, when I ask them, how much would your furniture cost if you did this? You've got a lot of MBA-type people with spreadsheets working in your organization. You must have run these models. They can't answer you. They've never actually looked into how much it costs. They're not interested in it. So what we have to do is we have to explain to people that stolen property is being bought and sold in their shopping mall, in their high street, and get them to make the change that happened to Nike and Adidas back in the 80s and 90s.
So this is citizen monitoring. Ben?
In terms of policies, California actually has one of the best laws on the books at the moment. It's called the California Transparency in Supply Chains Act, which was signed into law at the end of 2010 by outgoing Governor Schwarzenegger. That essentially requires all companies that make over $100 million to and file tax receipts in the state of California to publicly disclose on their websites what they're doing to monitor and whether they have a policy in place to monitor and combat slavery in their supply chains. They don't actually have to publish that policy. They don't actually have to have anything in place, but they have to say at least, we don't have any policy in place. Huh. And that presumably will empower our consumers to make a decision whether they want to go with a company that doesn't have a policy in place to audit, to use a third-party auditor to go through their supply chains, or one that does. Ironically, many of the companies that we named in the piece actually had those policies in place, but because the law only went into effect in January, they hadn't done full audits. We, according to Safeway, according to Walmart, contributed to accelerating that process. And again, I come back to that idea, an ounce of prevention, pound of cure. You go through, you audit your supply chains all the way down to raw materials, and you avoid having to deal with me.
Right.
Um,
You want to add anything?
Big incentive.
It's interesting you brought that up because that's part of all these laws, rules, and regulations that actually in the garment side really prevent real change at the bottom. It makes it very, very hard for the smaller guys, even if it's an honest supplier, to, let's say, get the right contract for the bigger guys, because the bigger guys say, no, there's a new law now that we have to comply to, and therefore we're going to go with the big agent out in Hong Kong, Lee and Fong, who's fantastic at shoveling out code of good conduct for $500 a piece in Vietnam. And then they get all the big contracts, and then, of course, the smaller guys who are struggling to do the right thing end up not getting those contracts. So I think we have to be really wary of what I jokingly and sometimes not call the suitcase philanthropists. Because sometimes it's not just going in and saying, look, here's a problem, let's have a powwow session, I'm going to solve the day, but really be there to understand the nuances that get really deep down to why and how these things happen. And really, it all comes down to one issue. It's poverty. So until we really get at these other core and bigger problems, we're not going to be able to solve the exploitation, especially the labor and environmental exploitation, because that only happens in places where it's just dire poor.
Thank you. So this, I think the takeaways are there are technological solutions, there are market solutions. That's a first step, but that's not enough. There are ultimately tremendous political interests, which we know about. Overcoming those does come down to citizens. What I hear you say is citizen monitors, citizen consumers. If you can create a market, a positive market for the kind of products where people want to pay. But it also comes down to citizens who are willing to stand up for their rights. And was willing to stand up, and to stand up at considerable, major personal sacrifice and danger. Even now, he is on blacklists. I hope very much one of the things that comes out of this summit is the creation of a fund or different ways where people like us, and I will personally be the first to sign up, can help contribute to support those individuals who have had the courage to stand up and to say, wait a minute, I'm not getting paid, I'm being enslaved, I'm going to do something. If we cannot make it possible for them to do that, then we aren't even going to hear about the problems that we can then use technology, politics, and citizen energy to solve. Thank you all very much.